For centuries, Great Britain has been regarded as one of the most influential nations in the world, renowned for its history, traditions, and strong cultural identity. However, over the past few decades, the country has undergone one of the greatest transformations in its modern history. Large-scale immigration has profoundly changed the composition of the population, reshaped entire neighbourhoods, influenced the economy, and brought new cultures, religions, and customs to cities across every region of the country. Yet, this transformation has also deeply divided British society. On one side are those who see immigration as a positive force, enriching the country's culture, strengthening its economy, and making Britain more diverse. On the other, millions of Britons believe that the nation's traditional identity is fading, that many communities no longer resemble the England they once knew, and that these changes have happened far too quickly. This debate now dominates politics, influences elections, and fuels increasingly intense discussions about security, the economy, integration, and the future of the country. But after all these transformations, one question continues to divide Great Britain like few others. Has immigration changed Great Britain forever? And before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really helps us keep bringing you content like this. Immigration has always been part of the history of the United Kingdom, but for much of the 20th century, it took place at a relatively controlled pace. After the Second World War, the country needed to rebuild its economy and faced a severe labour shortage. To meet this demand, thousands of people from former British colonies, including India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Caribbean nations, were invited to work in the United Kingdom. In the decades that followed, new waves of migration transformed the country even further. The expansion of the European Union allowed millions of workers, particularly from Eastern Europe, to move to Britain. More recently, the increase in asylum applications, humanitarian migration, and the arrival of people from different parts of Africa, the Middle East, and Asia caused the foreign-born population to grow at an even faster pace. This transformation became especially visible in Britain's largest cities. Places such as London, Birmingham, Manchester, and Leicester became home to dozens of different nationalities, with neighbourhoods where multiple languages are spoken every day, markets specialising in international products, and places of worship from a wide variety of faiths existing side by side. These changes have also reached virtually every aspect of British life. British cuisine has become far more diverse, with Indian, Pakistani, Chinese, Turkish, and African dishes becoming part of everyday life for millions of people. In the labour market, immigrants have taken on essential roles in sectors such as healthcare, construction, transportation, agriculture, hospitality, and a wide range of other services. At the same time, this diversity has reshaped the country's cultural identity. New traditions, festivals, languages, and customs have become part of everyday British life, making Great Britain one of the most multicultural societies in Europe. For many people, this transformation represents both cultural and economic enrichment. For others, it has happened so quickly that it has fundamentally changed the identity of many communities. It is precisely this difference in perspective that explains why immigration remains one of the most debated and controversial issues in British politics. For much of the 20th century, Great Yarmouth was one of England's most famous holiday destinations. Every summer, millions of people travelled to the town to enjoy its beaches, amusement parks, casinos, and long seaside piers. Beyond tourism, the local economy was also driven by fishing and, later, by the oil and gas industry in the North Sea, providing jobs and prosperity for thousands of families. But that prosperity did not last forever. As international travel became more affordable, many Britons began choosing cheaper and sunnier destinations such as Spain, Portugal, and Greece, instead of spending their holidays on England's coastline. At the same time, the fishing industry declined, parts of the local industrial sector weakened, and thousands of jobs disappeared. Without new investment to replace those industries, Great Yarmouth entered a long period of economic decline. Today, despite continuing to attract tourists, the town is also home to some of the most deprived areas in England. Many neighbourhoods face high levels of social deprivation, unemployment, and economic hardship. A walk through the town centre makes this transformation impossible to ignore. Hotels that once welcomed holidaymakers now show clear signs of neglect. Many shops have closed, buildings stand empty, and streets that were once full of life have lost much of their activity. For many residents, Great Yarmouth is no longer a symbol of the British seaside, but a symbol of the decline affecting many of the country's coastal towns. It was in this context that immigration became one of the town's most controversial issues. Because Great Yarmouth has a large number of older and relatively inexpensive hotels, some of them began being used by the government to accommodate asylum seekers while their applications were being processed. This policy, adopted in several parts of the United Kingdom due to the sharp increase in asylum claims, made Great Yarmouth one of the towns most closely associated with the immigration debate. For many local residents, however, the issue is not simply the arrival of migrants, but the feeling that the government responds more quickly to the needs of people who have recently arrived than to those of the local population. This perception is especially common among people who have spent years waiting for social housing or who are already living in vulnerable conditions. Many say they cannot access the support they need while seeing entire hotels used to house asylum seekers. Regardless of the legal obligations behind these policies, the comparison has fueled a deep sense of unfairness among many residents. This is where the debate moves beyond immigration itself and becomes a much broader question. When public resources are limited, who should be given priority? Those who support the current policy argue that the government has both a legal and humanitarian duty to provide temporary shelter for people fleeing war, persecution, or other dangerous situations. Many residents of Great Yarmouth, however, believe the priority should be different, solving the problems faced by British citizens who have spent years struggling to find housing, healthcare, and economic opportunities before helping anyone else. If Great Yarmouth symbolises the economic decline experienced by parts of England, Leicester represents a very different story: the cultural transformation brought about by immigration. Located in the heart of England, Leicester was for centuries a traditional English city, known for its textile industry, shoe manufacturing and engineering. After the Second World War, however, labour shortages attracted thousands of workers from former British colonies, particularly India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. The most significant turning point came during the 1970s. After Ugandan dictator Idi Amin expelled thousands of Asians from Uganda, the United Kingdom accepted tens of thousands of refugees who held British citizenship. A significant number of them chose Leicester as the place to rebuild their lives. In the decades that followed, new waves of immigration strengthened these communities even further, completely transforming the city. Today, Leicester is home to one of the largest Indian communities outside India. In some neighbourhoods, just a short walk is enough to find dozens of Indian restaurants, markets selling products imported directly from South Asia, traditional jewellery stores, clothing shops, Hindu temples, mosques, and cultural centres that have become part of everyday life. This influence is also reflected in the city's major celebrations. Leicester hosts one of the largest Diwali festivals outside India, attracting hundreds of thousands of visitors every year. The streets are illuminated with thousands of lights, cultural performances fill the city centre, and the festival has become one of the strongest symbols of Britain's multicultural identity. For many people, Leicester is proof that different cultures can live together and thrive in the same place. The city has a diverse economy. Businesses founded by immigrant families generate billions of pounds every year, and its food scene has become one of the most celebrated in the United Kingdom. But not everyone sees this transformation in the same way. As the population changed, many residents began arguing that the city had lost part of its traditional identity. In some neighbourhoods, the majority of residents now belong to communities of South Asian origin, while white British residents have become a minority. Some see this as a natural evolution of a modern society. Others believe it is evidence that England is gradually losing its traditional cultural identity. Religious and cultural differences have also created challenges for integration. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, and Christians live side by side every day, but not always peacefully. In 2022, Leicester attracted international attention after a series of clashes between Hindu and Muslim groups, initially triggered by a cricket match between India and Pakistan. The unrest quickly spread beyond sport, leading to religious tensions, street demonstrations, and dozens of arrests. These events raised a question that has since been debated across the United Kingdom. Are communities with very different backgrounds truly integrating, or are they simply living alongside one another? That question continues to divide academics, politicians, and the public. Supporters of multiculturalism argue that Leicester demonstrates how people from different backgrounds can build a dynamic, prosperous, and culturally rich city. Critics, however, argue that the growth of increasingly separate communities weakens national identity, increases segregation, and makes cultural conflicts more likely. Although immigration is one of the most controversial issues in British politics, there is another side to this story that cannot be ignored. Over the past few decades, millions of immigrants have come to play an essential role in keeping the United Kingdom's economy running by filling jobs, creating businesses, and helping drive economic growth. One of the clearest examples can be found in the public healthcare system. The National Health Service, better known as the NHS, relies heavily on workers who were born overseas. Doctors, nurses, caregivers, and countless other professionals from dozens of countries help care for millions of patients every single day. In many parts of the country, hospitals would struggle to maintain their services without this workforce. Immigrants also play a vital role in industries such as construction, agriculture, transportation, hospitality, restaurants, cleaning services, and elderly care. Many of these sectors face persistent labour shortages, leading employers to increasingly recruit workers from abroad. But the contribution of immigration extends far beyond the labour market. Thousands of immigrants have started their own businesses, opening supermarkets, restaurants, factories, technology companies, offices, retail stores, and small local businesses across the country. Many of these enterprises create jobs for British workers and generate billions of pounds every year, becoming an important part of the national economy. Experts also point out that many immigrants arrive in the United Kingdom during their working years, paying taxes and helping finance public services such as healthcare, education, and pensions. In a country with a rapidly ageing population, this workforce helps ease some of the pressure on the economy. Immigration has also profoundly transformed British cultural life. Today, Indian, Chinese, Turkish, Italian, Jamaican, and Middle Eastern cuisine have become part of the everyday diet of millions of people. Cultural festivals, diverse religious traditions, new musical styles, and artistic expressions have all become part of daily life across Britain, making the United Kingdom one of the most diverse societies in the world. In addition, many of Britain's leading universities and research institutions attract students, scientists, and highly skilled professionals from every corner of the globe. These talented individuals contribute to the development of new technologies, medical breakthroughs, and innovations that strengthen the country's position in numerous fields. For these reasons, supporters of immigration argue that it should not be viewed solely as a challenge, but also as one of the key reasons why Great Britain remains one of the world's largest economies. In their view, maintaining secure borders is important, but closing the country to people who want to work, build businesses, and contribute to society could lead to labour shortages, slower economic growth, and even greater difficulties in keeping essential sectors functioning. For some people, immigration represents an opportunity for growth. For others, however, it has created a much deeper concern, the feeling that Britain's traditional identity is gradually disappearing. This perception is not driven solely by the growing number of immigrants, but also by the speed at which some communities have changed. Within just a few decades, entire neighbourhoods have adopted new languages, religions, customs, and demographic profiles that are completely different from what existed before. For many residents, particularly older generations, It feels as though the places where they grew up have simply disappeared. This sentiment appears frequently in opinion polls and interviews conducted across different parts of the United Kingdom. Many people say they no longer recognise their own towns and cities and believe the government allowed these changes to happen too quickly without properly planning how different communities would integrate. At the same time, rapid population growth has placed increasing pressure on public services. In many areas, demand for housing has grown faster than the construction of new homes. Hospitals have had to care for larger populations, schools have needed to create additional places for students, and urban infrastructure has struggled to keep pace with the speed of growth. Experts point out that many of these problems are also linked to underinvestment in public services, natural population growth, and the housing crisis affecting the United Kingdom. Even so, for a significant portion of the population, immigration has become the main symbol of these wider challenges. Yet perhaps the greatest concern is cultural. Many Britons fear that traditions, customs, and values built over centuries are gradually being replaced by an increasingly fragmented society. It is not simply about the changing appearance of towns and cities, but about the feeling that British culture no longer occupies the central place it once held within its own country. On the other hand, supporters of multiculturalism argue that no culture remains exactly the same throughout history. They believe British identity has always evolved through change, outside influences, and adaptation, and that today's diversity is simply another chapter in that ongoing story. It is this clash of perspectives that explains why the immigration debate extends far beyond questions of economics or security. At its core lies a much deeper question: how much can a country change before it ceases to be the same country? After examining the economic, social, and cultural impacts of immigration, one question remains, perhaps the most difficult of all to answer. What does it really mean to be British? For much of history, the answer seemed relatively straightforward. It was rooted in a shared language, long-standing traditions, a common history, and the customs that shaped Great Britain over centuries. Today, however, that definition has become far more complex. For some people, being British has nothing to do with birthplace, ethnicity, or religion. Anyone who respects the law, embraces democratic values, and contributes to society can be part of the nation's identity, regardless of where they were born. Others, however, believe that a nation also depends on preserving its historical culture. In their view, when the composition of the population changes too rapidly and different communities no longer share a common identity, the very meaning of the nation begins to change. Perhaps neither of these perspectives offers a definitive answer. The Great Britain of today is dramatically different from the one that existed 50 or 100 years ago. Its cities, its population, and its culture have all been profoundly transformed, and every indication suggests they will continue to evolve in the decades ahead. The question is no longer whether the country is changing. That has already happened. The real question is whether this new society can successfully balance diversity, integration, and a shared national identity. Because in the end, Great Britain's future will not be determined solely by the number of people who enter the country, but by its ability to build a society in which people from different backgrounds can share the same sense of belonging. And perhaps that is the question that will continue to divide Britons for many years to come. Is Great Britain losing its identity, or is it simply writing a new chapter in its history?